This is a 2009 Lexus RX350 with the 3.5-liter V6 2GR-FE engine. In a previous video, we diagnosed that the water pump on this vehicle was making a loud noise, and we also determined that it had just started to leak. So in this video, we're going to replace the water pump. I'm going to be doing this almost all from the bottom, and I've already removed the side cover for the engine, and in order to give myself room to reach the water pump, which is right up above the crankshaft pulley, you can see the bottom of the water pump pulley right there. It's the black pulley. I'm going to remove the crankshaft pulley just so I can have room, and I'm also going to remove the pulley from the tensioner. I've already removed the belt as well, and you can refer to the previous video for how the belt was removed. I'm using a puller to get this pulley off, and this is coming off very easily, hardly any effort at all. Makes me wonder if the puller was even necessary, but trying to move the pulley by hand, it was just not moving. And here we are, it's all off. And with the pulley off, we got a little bit better view of where the leak is coming from. And you can actually see it forming a drop right on the water pump pulley. I'm going to show you my secret method for breaking the bolts of the water pump loose. This has never before been seen on video. You need two 12mm box wrenches. You take one of them and you jam it against the motor mount, and the other one is on the bolt that you want to loosen, and you do need to get a cheater pipe and put it onto this wrench that you want to loosen the bolt, and then you can break it loose, and you can go around bolt by bolt like that. And if you're clever, you're going to ask, well, what do you do about the last one? Well, here's the answer. It's a very good question. These bolts just need to be broken loose, and then once they're broken loose, they can be retightened and broken loose very easily. So that's how you do the last one. After you break it loose, you retighten it, and you do the next one, and then you're all done. So now the water pump pulley is hanging loose, but it will not come off. It will have to come off with the water pump. You cannot remove the pulley out of the car without the water pump. It will not come off the water pump. There is not enough clearance. Next step, I'm going to get this tensioner pulley out of the way. And this tensioner pulley has a 14mm bolt holding it. However, it is reverse thread. So to loosen it, you turn it clockwise. So now finally, with the tensioner pulley out of the way, we have a clear shot at all of the bolts of the water pump. For those that are behind the pulley, we can now sort of shift the pulley out of the way to reach those bolts. But first, let's drain the coolant. The most effective way to drain the coolant for the water pump is to use this block drain. It's on the back of the engine, facing towards the back, the rear of the car. And you can see here the passenger side axle, and the location of the block drain is right there. It has a 10mm nut or bolt on the top, and you're just gonna put a little hose, rubber or tube on it, so it doesn't splash everywhere. Of course, for this block drain to work, you have to open the radiator cap. The coolant is flowing out, and I'm collecting it in this empty bottle. And there, just in case you didn't believe me that anything was coming out, it drips out slowly, but it does all come out eventually. Why do I use the block drain? It's because if I just drain the radiator, then the coolant that's in the block will not come out. And then when you remove the water pump from the block, it'll just all splash out right into your face. It's not very desirable. The stuff tastes horrible. It has like bittering agents that are added, and besides, it's poisonous. So you do not want it splashing into your face. So using this block drain avoids that. Here it has slowed down to just a drop by drop drip. This means we can close up the block drain and move on to removing the water pump. I've loosened most of the bolts, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But you can see that what's left in the block is now draining out of the water pump. It's just sitting there. It's not attached by any bolts, or maybe there's one left. I'm going to have to check to make sure. I have all the bolts from the body of the water pump out. They're not all the same. There are some differences in the bolts. Some of them are 8mm, some of them are 6mm. That means 8mm has a 12mm head, 6mm has a 10mm head. And just to make it easier to put them all back in the right order, and I've stuck them into this old piece of cardboard that I had laying around the shop. But what's left now are the bolts for the thermostat housing, and those I will do from above. And to get to these bolts for the thermostat housing, I'm going to have to remove the upper radiator hose and the thermostat outlet tube. So let's get to that. Here's what I'm talking about right here. There's the tube with the upper radiator hose. Here's a view with an engine that's out of the car. This is the tube that we're talking about. It has nuts that go straight in this way, and the thermostat is right in here, and then this thermostat housing is bolted onto the water pump. It will have to come off. This is draining the radiator from the radiator drain plug, and I did not want to remove the plastic undercover. So the stream from the drain plug just splits along the undercover, and then it pours down in different places like a decorative waterfall. And you have to use a couple of catch pans to get it all so it doesn't splash all over the floor. Now, why didn't I not remove this undercover here? Because it is a giant pain in the ass. It takes like a half hour just to detach, then reattach this stupid undercover. So I'm leaving it right where it is. By the way, there's just two out of all of these bolts that can seem difficult to reach, and one of them is this one right here with the pulley in place. It's hard to see this bolt, and it's difficult to reach it. Fortunately, it's a 6mm bolt, so it's not torqued very tight. And with just a little bit of patience and precise work, you can break it loose and then turn it out. The other bolt that's difficult to reach, I'm going to show you on the engine out of the car. The other one that's tricky is this one that I'm shining the light on. It's for the thermostat outlet or inlet, or either way you want to call it. It's a 10mm nut, and it's just sort of tricky to get to it. You have to use a long extension from the front. I'll show you in a minute. So this is how we do that nut with an extension and a ratchet, 10mm. And please, if you're watching this, you do not need to remove the engine from the car. People always ask when they see the engine out of the car. They ask, oh, I didn't know you had to remove the engine to do the water pump. Well, the only reason I'm showing you on this engine that's out of the car is there's no way you would see anything that I'm doing with the engine in the car. So this is just for demonstration purposes only. And you can do the water pump job with the engine in the car, okay? It's kind of unpleasant, but that's how it's done. So let's get started with what we have to do from the top. First, this torque mount or motor mount must come off, and this motor mount does not bear any engine weight, so it comes off pretty easily. There, the motor mount is off. Next, I'm going to remove this engine mounting bracket, and I'm also going to disconnect this ground cable. Here's the motor mount bracket that came off from right down there, and I'm going to set it aside. And this retainer bracket has come off these two studs. Next, this second bracket comes off, and you see what we're trying to get to is the connection between the housing and that hose right there. And we're almost there. We just need to get this lower portion of the engine mounting bracket off. So here comes the water neck after loosening the two nuts, and just be careful with those nuts, because if you strip either one of them, particularly the one on the inside here, you'll probably be dropping the engine. So just exercise extreme care. And here is the motor mount bracket. Now, to get this bottom bolt out, I actually had to lift up the engine using a floor jack. And I'll show you how I did that in just a moment. But this now gives us pretty good access so we can get this thermostat housing off. Okay, so now to lift the motor up, first I loosened this bolt that's on top of the lower motor mount. Then I got the jack, floor jack with a block of wood right under the oil pan, and just lifted it up by less than an inch, 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, and that was enough to free up that bolt, because otherwise it was jamming up against the frame. And finally, this housing can be pulled off, and this outlet here goes onto this O-ring, and so it's a little bit stubborn. I sprayed some lubricant in there to make it slide out a little bit easier. And yeah, you may want to replace this O-ring. In fact, maybe I think it comes with the kit, but I'm not sure. And there is one more bolt for the water pump. It's right there near the top of the frame, above the water pump inlet. It's a 10mm bolt. You would have never gotten to this bolt without removing the water inlet. With that final bolt removed, the water pump is completely off. It's detached from the block, and I can just slip it upward or downward, doesn't really matter, but it does take two hands to do that, so I'm going to have to let go of the camera. This is taking a closer look at the water pump that I've removed, and to show you where the noise was coming from, I'm just going to spin this bearing, and I hope you can hear that. Maybe if I flip it the other way. So the new water pump that we've installed does not make any such noise. It spins perfectly silent. What about this? Is this okay? See the radial play of this shaft? This is the box that the pump came in. And the reason I'm showing it is there's a lot of counterfeit products out there. And this Ison is the OE brand, original equipment. This is a part number for it. And if you want to be sure that the pump you buy is authentic, then it better come in one of these boxes. Here from the bottom, I've shimmied and slipped the new pump in with this gasket and with the pulley just kind of floating on top of the boss on the water pump. And here's a good look at the water pump in position. I've got the top bolt in position, you can see it there, and I've also got one additional bolt on either end of the water pump just to line it up. They're kind of loosely fitted. And now I'm going to refer to the instructions that came with the water pump for the torques on the bolts, and also some of these bolts need to be sealed with Loctite to prevent leakage. By looking at the bolts that I have, I can see which ones have Loctite on them. You can see those green traces. That's Toyota factory sealant. That's equivalent to blue Loctite. So it's these two bolts with the 10mm heads that are part way in from the left side that need Loctite. Now all of these other bolts, the long ones, have some residue of RTV on them because they seal up the timing cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure the water pump in place with the one bolt at the very top and the two bolts on either end. And then I'm going to start installing all of the other bolts. This bolt that is right behind the pulley here, 10mm bolt, is a lot easier to reach from the top with the motor mount and the water necks all out of the way. Previously I removed it from the bottom. That's a little bit difficult. The way to do it is just wait until everything is off on top and then remove it. These two bolts that go right here and here are the two that have some Loctite on them. I'm going to use blue Loctite. And they are 6mm bolts with a 10mm head. Okay, and their position is right above this pulley boss, which is unused on this engine. These are the bolts for the motor mount bracket. I'm going to show you their order. There's a short one here, another short one up here. Then you have three long ones that go along here and here. And there's one more that's different from all the rest and goes in this bottom hole right here. So it's important to get this order right, obviously, when you put it back. There's a large diameter O-ring that goes right here on the water pump housing. You want to make sure you put this on. This O-ring does come with the kit, and there's the best view I can give you of where it goes. The second O-ring that comes in the kit goes on this crossover tube right here. One tip I'm going to give you for when you lift the engine up in order to reattach the motor mount bracket is you loosen up the two motor mounts on the cradle, the one in the front and the one in the rear that supports the axle. So you loosen them up from underneath. You do not need to remove the nuts that hold them in. Just loosen them up, and then you can lift this motor mount enough so that you have the clearance that you need to reattach the motor mount bracket to the side of the engine. And whatever you do, if you can help it, do not lift the engine up off the top of this stud, because if you do, the engine will shift. Then you will have a very difficult time shifting it back to where it lines up. So lift it up as far as it goes, but without taking it off the top of that stud. One thing you need to be aware of is this Woodruff key that's on the crankshaft, where the crankshaft pulley goes. And sometimes this Woodruff key will just fall right out, and in worst case it will drop down behind the timing cover. So just make sure it doesn't fall out, and then just be sure that you check when you're reattaching the pulley that the Woodruff key is there, that it has not fallen out. There is not a lot to note about the reassembly except maybe one thing, which is this right here is the purge valve. So this is at the high point of the system, and it allows you to, if you open it, to let air out, and you can even put like a little hose on it so that a column of water and air can rise up. To fill her up, I use this filler funnel, and as I mentioned, I've opened the purge valve and I've attached a hose to it so I can see when coolant starts to rise up through the column. And there, I don't know if you can see it, but as coolant bubbles down into the funnel, it's bubbling out through the tube. So for the level of coolant to rise through this hose, it means that all the air has come out of the system, or most of it anyway. I've started up the car, and I'm letting it run like this with the funnel on the radiator. It's to let more air bubbles come out of the system, and you can see some of them coming out little by little. Well, it's kind of stopped now. Oh, there's another one. I'm just going to do this until the thermostat opens. When the thermostat opens, this hose right here will turn from cold to hot, and that's how we know that the thermostat has opened. No drips coming down the side of the engine, and no drips underneath. That's very reassuring. Thermostat just opened, and I'm seeing some bubbles coming out, which is exactly what we expected. So we're right on track. And of course the job is not done until the top plastics are on with all of the plastic clips. And this is the reason that I have plastic clip assortments like these, and I'll put a link to them in the video description. Don't forget your side cover.